I'll begin in just a moment. I'm just setting a couple things up and clearing up a few things inside my Discord server, supporters, and then going. All right. So basically, what I'm working on right now is further more on the appended state stuff I added. Whenever we have show you okay, so this is a local client moving. You can see the move rate is pretty much 6 units per second. That's actually like the velocity of the rigid body, and that's what it should be. But whenever I move the client host, you can see it's jumping between something. It looks like it might be stuttering a little bit as well, which shouldn't be happening. Like, it looks like it's moving the same speed, but the speed being reported is wrong, and that should be the case. That's kind of what the appended state thing should resolve, but clearly something is still wrong. So I'm going to look at that and see what could be going on, because yeah, we don't want bugs. So this is the code where don't really need that bit, but it's not going to hurt anything. Probably do want. Oh, this is on post tick. Okay, I mean, that could be post tick or that could be update. Either one's fine. But let's go ahead and see what could be going on. The only way that the move speed should be different is if perhaps the inputs are not the same. That's what I'm going to check right now. Also, I only got up like an hour ago, so bear with me. It is noon. Yes, I stayed up quite late. But let's see. So we're gonna do first. We're gonna do if data dot move direction equals 0. We're gonna log a warning. First, we're going to log the state, and we're going to probably log the tick. It says it's. I think it's a. Oh, it's a vector too. Okay, that's fine. Data dot get tick. There we go. I guess I could just do if horizontal for x. We don't need to compare vectors. That's just asking for trouble. All right, so if there's no x, then we're going to log. And there should always be x as long as the object is moving. There'll be a couple times when there's not x, when the object is idle and then begins to move. So we're going to see a couple ticks or frames where that's not the case. But as long as I'm still moving it regularly, it should always be printing, or should not be printing rather, because it should always have. Let's take a look. You know what? I'm going to get that on my own character too. So I need to do if not is owner, because I want to check against the server one or the client host. All right, here we go. Replayed future. Okay, so replayed future is showing that puts. That's wrong. Let me go ahead and update the code real quick. If not owner, and I don't want to print on the server either. So if not server initialized, there we go. We're also going to do else. Actually, I'm going to take the same code here. Except I'm going to make it a regular log. So if it's a regular log, there is a horizontal direction. Otherwise, there's not. Okay. Moving, stopping. Okay. So let's see. We got created for 5, 4, 6, and okay, I see. It's replaying the future, which doesn't have values because that is the future, so that actually makes sense. So when you're using appended, it still uses the same tick the data actually came on in, which is 5, 4, 6, but it's playing it at the end of the tick instead of putting it back into the history and then reconciling and playing it. So that makes sense. Now I would kind of expect it to still be replaying at least one created afterwards. This just means it's reconciling before it can actually, or after rather. So let me backtrack here. Whenever you get the tick here, the data, it does run it at the end of the tick, but it also puts it back into the history. So it tick aligns it, so if there's any corrections, it'll line up correctly. And then when you do eventually reconcile, however often you have that set to, it will replay anything past it. So right now the reconciles are every tick in this test, which means, yeah, which means it should be probably at least replaying one of the inputs because we're not skipping any. That might be a problem. Let's check that out real quick. I don't think that's necessarily the issue here. Although it could be because we're not replaying into the future. Yeah, I mean, that could be the problem actually. Now that I think about it. So, one, I would expect it to at least try to replay the latest input for corrections, but it's reconciling beyond that. I need to look at that first. Let's see. Just bump this up to 3. That should correct it, and I mean, just a hard set value, but That's basically saying hold the reconciles a tiny bit longer for a chance of the appended states to be put back into history so that we can use the corrected value. Okay, so we can see now that it is actually replaying them properly. That was for testing something. Get rid of that entirely. One interpolation. All right. So perhaps it does need to be at least 2. I'm going to leave it at 3. Put some notes here. Okay. So basically just says what I said earlier is we're going to essentially hold the inputs or the reconciles so that they're a little further back, which means more simulations per reconcile, but we're going to be replaying that appended state. So that's not the issue though, because you looked, it is still, I don't know if you noticed, but the value is still lower than expected. So if I had to guess, the reason for that is because whenever these debugs log, whenever they log, they're indicating that there's no horizontal input. Although, let me check something. Because okay, so if it logs warning, there's no input, but if it logs regular, there is input. So I'm gonna have to look at the logs again real quick. Set them back up. I might actually just change this so it only logs in general if there's no input. And what I expect to see here is that the current created will never log as no input because the object's always going to be moving. The issue seems to be happening with the replayed input. Let me go ahead and hit this, and it will do it at first because the object's not moving just yet, but once it gets moving, it should stop. All right, yeah, so there's nothing happening under the current. It's all in the replayed. So the reason, my conclusion is the reason that it's happening now is because it's still replaying into the future, which is using 0 inputs because the data has not yet been received for that. So I have 2 options here. I could be like, hey, if it's the future, you probably want to always replay your past inputs, which I don't know if that's exactly what I want to do, because that is kind of how that adds extra burden to people developing. It is technically the proper way to do it, but it's not necessarily the easy way or what people actually expect to do. So when I say that, I have a guide. Let me bring it up here. Fish networking documentation. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna bring that over. So we have a guide here that whenever you go over to prediction version 2 and creating code, predicting states, basically it says when a state is in the future, too long, didn't read version. When the state's in the future, it has not yet been received from the server, and you might want to use the last state information as if that's also a state in the future. And that's basically what we're going to do. So we can do this if not owner and not server initialized. So basically client only and you don't own the object. We're going to do if state.isFuture data dot let me save this real quick. Last move, was it move direction? Yeah, last move direction. Why? Oh, it's read only. Go. So I think that's going to solve the issue. I don't know if that's really the workaround I want to say, like tell people to use, but oh, it did not solve the issue. It's still showing the incorrect value, but we can see that it's actually holding the value. Like it's not showing up here constantly indicating that there's no input. So I would expect at that point that the velocity will be. I expect to fix at that point, but it's not. Let me just do. This is going to spam my console so much. We'll just do it in the move here. rb.rigidbody2d.velocity.magnitude. Okay. I'm going to actually log this out and then add on the magnitude. Okay. That's kind of weird. It's showing the magnitude is only. I mean, it's varying quite a lot. I do see it occasionally hit a 5x somewhere up here. It's like it's just dropping off. So when it's created, it's showing the correct magnitude, except here. But when it's replay created, it's showing the correct magnitude, and then the first future after, and then it drops off like it's not applying. Interesting. Like it's not applying the forces or something. That's what I'm gathering from that. Alright. Oh, you know what? Where are the oh. That was my bad. I should be calculating the forces at the end. So I imagine now it's going to work properly. There it is. Okay, so now it's actually working properly because it's using the last forces. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that when I do change directions, it kind of jumps. That's because we're predicting into the future the incorrect values, and it is causing a correction. You can also see when I stop, when it snaps back a little bit. That's what's causing that. Alrighty. So that solves that issue per se, but that's not really a resolution I want to go for. So what could I possibly do in regards to this? Well, I could simply not. I guess I'd have to pause the rigid body basically to hold its state and then unpause it at the end, but that's probably not ideal because whenever it's paused, like let's say if it might be easier to show in text. Let's say if this here is the player object, let's say your owned object, the one you own, so we'll say O, and it's moving this direction regularly, as in to the right, but then you have the non-owned objects, which we'll just say N, is also moving to the right. Now, if you were to future predict the same input like we are doing now, it would move with this one as well because they're both moving to the right, assuming they both have right input. But if you were to simply pause the rigid body when you are trying to predict the input instead of predicting it in the future, then it would just basically stop. It would stop moving. It should retain the velocity it has at the end of the tick, so it would basically reapply that at the end of the tick or set it back to what it is. But the issue is let's say it does stop here and it stops here, right? What's going to happen is the object you own is then going to hit this marker where it's stopped. I guess in this case, if the rigid body is quote unquote pause, which basically disables it, nothing's going to happen and you'll pass through it. But let's say if the object did not actually continue moving in this direction, like this is what we expect to happen. But let's say the object actually, so this is what we're predicting. We're predicting this, or rather this is what we think it might do, but in reality the object slows down. So we'll just say here it slows down and we'll just indicate this is a stop. So what's going to happen is the player object is going to go like this, and once it gets to this point, since the other object is slowed down, it should actually affect the movement of the player object, meaning it's rigid body forces. It should basically collide with and slow it down. So it's not going to actually reach this point because it's going to hit the other object and slow down. But if the object is paused, the spectated object, then you're just going to pass right through and keep going. And then that's going to result in another correction from the server. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. Not entirely sure how I can get this to behave the way that some people would expect, where it shows the actual velocity without going too far into the future, but also without pausing. I really feel like this might just be a thing where you can't really get the best of both worlds without doing some customization, because that's just how prediction works. So it does give me another option I considered at one point that might be a fair alternative. And that is simply letting users be able to know if the input being run is the last input prior to the future. So, for example, let's say I want to print this magnitude only if not the future. So let's go like this, for example. Refreshing, still reloading. Oh my gosh, come on. All right, so if we look now, it appears to still be working properly. Oh, that's my mistake. I need to take out this bit because this is not going to, that's going to affect it. It should work properly when it's replaying created, but when it replays current, there's going to be that gap where it's not predicting the inputs as the last inputs, and it should probably be slightly wrong on current created. Yeah, and it is, as we can see. So current created is wrong, current created is wrong as expected, and replayed is all correct. I think, and the issue is you could definitely cache this the way they wanted. So let's say if I did private float last velocity or whatever. Oh man, there's so many issues with doing it this way as well. But I'll show you something. We'll say last velocity, and if not, we'll do if state dot is future. So if not to future, what I meant to say there, and state dot is replayed, then last velocity equals this here. This is basically the check where I said that somebody could do and see if, you know, it's the last confirmed data. We're indicating it's not future. Future means you're ultimately predicting. And when it's in the replayed state, we are using data in the correct point of history as it is, which means tick a line, which means, you know, perfect value, in other words. So now if I were to do, I'll just update the text here. Should see that it'll print the right 5.99, etc. Where are we? Yeah, so it is printing the right text now, but there's still another issue with that because how some people are going to want to design. One, it's kind of annoying caching that. I mean, I could make something built in that does it automatically for you. That'll make it a little bit easier to grab this information, or rather know when this state is true, for example. So like, let's say if you only wanted to update this text when that state was true. We'll do bool last created state equals not future and is replayed. And then I could do if is last created state. This is where you could, say, update the text. I'm not sure what they named all the variables in this script because this isn't my script. Okay, so velocity text.text equals .toString. So basically indicating if this is the last created state, being last true data we know, then we can update the text. And instead of this being like a local boolean, you would just do something like if base dot is last created, etc. But not that wordy probably. And that should be ultimately the same thing. So let me go ahead and reload the project here and try it out. All right, client host started. I obviously broke something. Oh, I didn't, okay. It's because it's also updating in post tick, so it's overwriting the value. There we go. Try again. Yeah, so now it's working. I am curious what happens if I pause the rigid body. I'm gonna try that because just simply curious how that'll play out. So if state is future, we're gonna do base dot network object rigid body pauser dot pause. And if not the future, we're gonna do unpause. Now this could all be handled internally. I'm just kind of curious how this plays out. All right. Now I know for a fact that if the scenario I described where you could potentially pass through a paused object when you wouldn't normally be able to, I 100% know that is still possible, but it's prediction. You're trying to predict the future. It doesn't mean you're always going to get it right. You got to do your best to put it in that fashion. And that's just how it is. That's how it is with every single framework. All right, so let's try it now. Oh, look at that. That actually worked. I mean, I'm not surprised that worked, but it is nice that it worked first try. So that's always good. So that's cool, but what happens if the object is not moving? Like I said, let's bring in that scenario that I mentioned. So first thing, I'm going to take out this bit entirely, which means this is all the fancy stuff removed. I'm going to go back to the project here. I need to stop it on the server as well. This is the clone, so let me bring over the server. Let's go to the prefab here and let's add a collider. This object doesn't have a graphical or any, I don't believe. Okay, so it's supposed to be a sprite renderer, but there's no sprite. Okay, that's fine. do, we'll just do 1x pixel. Okay. Now we're going to add a box collider, 2D box collider actually. And I can see it's around it there. Now I'm going to bring the server back over here. And what I expect to happen is it shouldn't be able to move beyond it, or might push it. Yeah, that's exactly what I expected. All right, so this is what happens when I'm going to move the client now over here on the left. This is what happens when you collide with it. You'll notice that you're both stopping around 3, and that's basically expected. That's just physics, forces, and all that stuff. Let's go ahead and turn back on the pauser and see what happens. So comment this out. All right, so I'm going to move this off screen a little bit, move this closer here, and then go ahead and move into it. See? Now, you're still correcting because the server's sending reconciles, but if there's more latency, you're probably going to pass through it even more. So let me go ahead and try and introduce some latency. All right, so I am setting up Clumsy here. Going to make it really drastic and add a little over 200 milliseconds there. So let's go and run into it. And yeah, as expected, you're going to pass way through it because it's going to take a while for that correction to catch up to you. So this is quite literally not viable in any situation. Again, this is not per se a limitation of fish networking. This is just how prediction works in general. Question is how do I give the tools to the developer to make this as easy as possible for them to handle such situations? I feel like using the last created state is even then it's not necessarily great, because like this one gave us the best results, but this is only viable if you're actually reconciling every single tick. Because what if you're not? What if you're doing only every 10 ticks, for example? You're not going to replay the latest data every time, and basically you're going to skip over some replays because you're intervaling the reconcile, which is good for performance, but not if you want the absolute most accurate information. So very interesting case. I'm not sure if there's any way to actually work around this to the desired outcome of this particular person. Alright, so let's just think it over a little bit here. This is the point where I stare at the screen, pretending like something magical is gonna pop out like a unicorn and give me the answer, but it's not gonna happen. So we'll skip that. It's not possible. What they want is simply not possible. Now you could do it by using, like I said, this check internally, and then they could base it off that, but that's only going to fly if they're reconciling every tick, which means they're going to take the performance hit of that. So I think I'm just going to have to give them some options as to what to use in terms of fetching the velocity. And the only other alternative, which isn't really great, is just holding the client inputs until the latency catches up with them. So that basically means the client doesn't even run their own inputs until at least latency passed where they'd have the latest server values. But that kind of defeats the whole purpose of client-side prediction, doesn't it? So that's really a no-go. Let me go ahead and disable this first of all. I kind of wish they were in the stream right now watching, so I don't think they're online, so I could get their perspective as to what would be good for this situation, because I know how to handle this if it were my project, or like if I wanted to do a certain thing. Like if I knew what task exactly they wanted to accomplish or to why, I could definitely like, okay, this is probably how I would do it. But it's so hard to do it on a per user basis, and this is like always going to be the case. Everybody's going to expect something different. Let's see. I think I can start by adding in this bit here, but I don't know how far that's actually going to go in regards to the appended thing, but it still could be good if you're reconciling every single time. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the stream/chat. I'm going to open up network behavior.prediction. Okay. Alrighty. Give me somewhere near here. Deciding where to organize this. Okay. I'll just put it right here. Private pool is there's so many possible outcomes of how people want this, and this is why you see some people be like, okay, well, this framework has a problem with this and that framework has a problem with that, is because there's no one size fits all, and you have to basically customize it. So my objective is to basically provide the tools to allow you to customize your needs. You still have to know how to use those tools. Returns if the tick provided is the last tick to provide created data. This will be true when let's go back up to the top here. Add another field in here. Private uint last created tick equals time manager onset tick. Last tick when data was replicated, when created data was replicated. This only applies on non-owned objects. We'll just say non-authoritative objects. There we go. Got an error. Oh, that's fine. Okay. So now I need to go to void reset. There'll be a reset state down here. Where are you? Not down there. Okay. There is somewhere up here. In here, there is somewhere code for that. So let's go over here. Okay, so that's what it is. This should actually be reset state sync types. I've changed the naming a little bit internally. This won't affect anybody. Internally to basically just match with everything else. Like you just saw, this was sync types underscore reset state, but throughout rest of the code it's reset state underscore type. Just like this should actually be reset state prediction. I go to pass in as server, even though it shouldn't really matter, but because it's not used in this case. Okay, let me just make sure that's the only place it's. Okay, on ownership server. So here's one where I don't know if I have the on ownership client internal. Okay, I do. So I need to actually add that under there as well. Let me close some stuff. So this right here is called, in all cases, after the reset state prediction, and it is related prediction. So this should actually be moved over here. And it's done afterwards. We're going to move it at the bottom. We're going to take this, and under on ownership client, this is where we're going to reset the prediction state, because this basically says that if they are the owner now, or if the previous owner was themselves, then that's no longer, whatever history they had is no longer applicable. That's when we'll actually reset it here. And the last red reconcile tick. I feel like that only needs to be reset as well if that changes. Yeah, that should also only need to be changed on this case. Okay, so we're going to do we're going to clear that out. Right now I'm basically just checking everything. All right, so this is actually server code, but it only runs if not server. There, like, I'm sorry, I should say this can run on server or non-owned objects, but we see this is only used if not the server. So I think if not server, okay. So this check only needs to be applied if not server. Realistically, this could be run as server or not because the server doesn't use it. So, you know, it doesn't really matter if I clear or not, but Yeah. All right, let's check out this one. This could be on server or client. If the server's getting data from the owner, this is going to be called on the server. If the client's getting data from the server, it's going to be called on, of course, the client. So that doesn't matter if server or not, that's going to reset. Last red reconcile tick. This is probably only the client. Yeah, this is only the client. So we're going to do, I'm going to make this a little bit different. If as server, else. Kind of figured I'd have to break it up like this, but I'm just going to do it now. All right, so this one runs for both. This one only runs if not as server, only clients. Let me just double check this. Okay, these are both used by server and client. Yep. Okay. Last created tick. This is the new one we just added. This could be applicable for both server and. We're gonna go ahead and leave that as is. What do I have for server only? Do I not have any for server only? No, I really don't. I'm still gonna leave that there because internally it's still a jump code and it's gonna be ultimately the same whether I leave this empty or not. But I'll just go ahead and do it like this, just to keep the code a little more minimal. Oh, so clear replicate cache doesn't even matter if as server or not. It just clears them both. Which I guess that makes sense. Go back to this. Okay. Do I even need this anymore then? I don't really need this method for prediction 2. The only reason it existed really is because I had to check if prediction 1 versus prediction 2, but it's not really needed anymore because the ad server is not used. So realistically, I don't even need this method. So let me just get rid of it entirely. And if I go back over here, it's gonna be like, hey, that's missing, obviously. I'm just gonna drop it down there. So that should fix that bit. None of these changes at all affect the stuff I was working on previously, if you were watching that. Okay, let's see. I got a message real quick. Let me check. Oh, it's hiding your name because I'm in a stream. Whoever messaged me on Discord. It's reconcile, not reconcile. Yes, thank you. I am terrible with some things of that nature. If you have questions to ask, you can just ask right in the chat, in the live stream chat, not the Discord chat, because I don't really see Discord chats. I only noticed yours because it came up as a notification. But yeah, ask in the live stream, and I will answer. All right, so we got room to rum. We used to say it by rum on accident, not like a hard rum like the alcohol RUM, but there was a little bit of that in there. So rum to room, and that one I knew. Obviously, it's just my accent. I've lived all over the country. I used to call booleans just because I don't know why. I never looked up the pronunciation of it, I guess. And it's funny because I still call them booleans sometimes. I'm getting better about it. It's just kind of once you get something embedded in your memory, it's hard to break that cycle. And now reconciles are reconciles, which I know is pretty sure I should say is the right way to say it. But yeah. All right, one more word to add to my resume of words I say wrong and need to correct. So let's see. Now, the whole reason for this was to basically add in this feature and then update this properly in accordance to it. So let's go to gonna be under void replicate non-authoritative, or it's actually gonna technically be both authoritative and non. Let's do the authoritative one first. This is super easy. This is always going to be current creative because whenever you own the object, you know the data flow, like what's coming in, what's not. So in this case, it's going to be last created tick equals, I probably cached a tick up here somewhere. Yeah, okay, I use the local tick, equals local tick. So now if you own the object, you say is last created tick or whatever, wherever I put that, bool is last created. Okay, so we're just gonna do, we're gonna finish this. Return tick equals last created tick. All right. Tick to check if is last created for this object. Okay. As I said, technically this could just be, I could just do if owner always return true, but that's just seems pointless to add in that extra logic when I can just set it here. Okay, so now I'm going to do void replicate non-authoritative. I'm also thinking about nuking the prediction one stuff relatively soon. I don't think many people are using it. I'll have to do a poll before I do it, and it'll have to be unanimous, just so I make sure that everybody agrees to get rid of it. But yeah, there's still a lot of code in here that's like just pages and like thousands of lines for the old prediction stuff, and it's completely not necessary anymore. All right, so void replicate non-native. All right, so current future created, current created. Okay, so current future. Oh, so I already have a check here, so it's not really. Oh, this is for current created, not replayed created. Now this, I would think, should be, even if being replayed, not just created. So let me check that real quick, because this is being called. All right, set unordered true. Set unordered true. This is under authoritative. I mean, that's always going to be the last value no matter what. Also, I don't really need to call get tick on this. I could use the local tick. I'm gonna do that. This might bite me in the butt later instead of using data.local tick, but it does save a little bit of performance. I think I'm going to I know it's the same value I'm setting here, because I see that's the only point in the code where I actually set it down here. But to prevent my shooting myself in the foot, as they say, I'm just going to pull it here as well, just in case I do change it somewhere in the code later. How I set it to data. I want to make sure that I'm using the one from the data, not whatever I changed at the time. So that's fine there, and let's go back to here and then back to here. Okay, so it's set on order. It's going to update it. Okay, so if owner is valid, this is updating the last replicate tick for that owner. I feel like it should not be discard. Basically, old tick option is basically saying if the tick is old, it's going to not update it. Alright, so that might actually be true, because this is basically, in this sense, this is the last tick that was received in an estimate of current value. Whereas any network object here, this is the last tick for this object. The last tick being run, which if you read the description, it says sets the last tick this network behavior replicated with. Now, if we actually go to this here, last tick this object replicated. Now, as the code is currently, this is actually using the last tick that was current created, and it's not actually using the last replicate tick, so that's probably not correct. And oh, it's also only internal, so no one's actually using this. Okay then, well, let me fix that. Gotta check. What if this is internal too? This is public. I don't know if anybody's using it. I need to see if this where this is actually used. It's updated there, and this is when it's pre-initialized. It's just updated with may not be needed. This is just updated with an estimate when the object spawns. Sorry, I was reading some chat. So that's probably not even needed anymore, but we'll keep it there. And that's also using discard as a default. Other than that, it's not used anywhere. It's just exists. If I'm not even using it, why does it even exist? I'm gonna back this up real quick because I'm gonna start deleting stuff. This might have been old code that was used in prediction 1, but not really needed in prediction 2 anymore. Let's see. Supporters. Backup before destructive operation. And push. All right. Goodbye. Last tick to replicate even if out of order. This is just updating the value. It's not actually using it per se. It's just updating it. Is this even use call anymore? Okay. That, I need to make a note of that. Okay. Check if this method is needed and if it should be moved to reset state prediction. All right. Where are my errors? Should be errors. Over here for a second. Delete that from there because that's no longer used. Should be reset state link types. This initialize. And this is just another initialize, which shouldn't be needed because it's not actually used. And it's internal, so there's no way anybody else is using that. So that's kind of cool. Not have to worry about that. I just need to check something real quick on a enterprise chat here. I'll just question. Give me 1 second to answer. Answering question here. Okay. So I just wiped out that code. That was no longer needed. The other thing was, as I said, I need to see if this can be moved. reset replicate tick. Okay. Okay, that's correct. I feel like this is wrong. Or could use work. I mean, I don't know if it's wrong per se because it might not be used, but it could definitely probably use work. This line should probably be removed. Last replicated tick. Oh, it doesn't say last unordered. We'll come back to that. So this is just setting the value. It's not actually using. That's resetting it. Server never replays, so and this is only on the network object. Set replicate tick unordered again on the network object. This is on the network behavior. Let me look at this one. There's a lot more to this one. Okay. See, this is one where it's actually setting it even if it's a replay or not. So I think what's happening is basically this is a lot of stuff that I used in the past and probably don't use anymore with the changes. And this might be relevant here. So this is for if it's non-authoritative and it's setting the tick. If there's a history known, it's going to set the tick from the history. Otherwise, it's going to try and guesstimate the value based on that. I don't think this is actually a problem per se because the history count is always going to be valid. The only time it's not going to be valid is literally on like the very first one where there's no history added. In which case, this is never going to really be used. I don't think that's actually needed in that sense. So let me go ahead and go here. So let's see. This is under, again, the non-authoritative one. So it's saying if there's nothing in queue, then it's going to use the last replicated tick, which again, this could be an estimated value +1. Yeah, that could be old code. That could definitely be an improvement. Basically a refactor, but I don't think it's real needed anymore. But so this is being used like it's unordered, but it's not, or it doesn't really follow the same convention as the other one. I go to here. That description is not as valid anymore, so get rid of that. A lot of this too might be because I was trying to reuse stuff for prediction 1 and 2, which is why I ultimately separated the files down, commented out or used defines to separate the files. So I imagine once I remove prediction 1, I'm going to have a lot of stuff to delete. Last unordered replicate tick. Last tick to replicate, which is not replayed. Alright. Is it raining out? Ah, yes, it's raining out. You guys know how I like my rain. It is pouring. Alright, so let's change that one. Again, let's change this one. It's also really windy out. Oh, this should be probably before that. This should be set before. It is pouring a lot. Alright, so I have my bearded dragon outside in my greenhouse, and my greenhouse is not waterproof right now. So I'm gonna make sure my bearded dragon's not in a swamp right now. So I'll be right back. Alright, so my bearded dragon was actually in a giant mud puddle, but she was in there intentionally. She was swimming around. She likes to play in the mud, but sometimes she falls asleep random places outside, and bearded dragons are very dense, and they will probably, I don't know if they will, but it takes a lot to wake her up, and I just want to make sure she wasn't asleep in a puddle or something, because you never know. I am, however, going to probably go ahead and end this stream, and all I'm doing now is just boring refactoring stuff to make this more legible. So, yeah, for now I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, take a break, enjoy the rain, and I'll be back to work on this later today. Thanks, everybody, for watching.